Do you have free will, or everything you do in the life is predetermined by external factors and you are just someone to fulfill the role? People have been talking about these subjects for more than 1,000 years and there is still not a clear answer. Some people will say people decide their own fate and people is a master and they master on their fate. But some people will say everything in the life is predetermined for us and we are just fulfilling our roles. And some great philosophers kept discussing about this topic and subject, but there don't seem to be a clear answer about this. So what do you believe and what should you think perhaps one more time about? So it's a pretty tough subject to talk about, but I think it's safe to say everybody has opinion about this subject. So when you have a deed, when you will to do something, you will live with consequences. So if you say it's predetermined by external factors, you will just be in a loop. So anything you do in the life, let's say you murdered a person and you will not be accountable and responsible for that thing because it was predetermined for you to do and you're just fulfilling your role. But if you believe this, if you believe that you have a free choice and it was your will to murder that person, then you will have both responsibility and accountability. So what do you believe? It's a very, very hard topic to discuss, but I think people do have free choice on their moves. People can choose to have a toxic relationship, to have a toxic food, to have a toxic medication, which will result in their mental health or physical health in a bad way. But they're assuming that they are victims because these external factors led them into those ways, but it's not true because they had a choice. They had a choice to be in that relationship. They had a choice to drink that toxic substance, or they had a choice to take the toxic pills which will harm them in a physical health way. They chose and they have to assume responsibility and accountability for their choices. But if a person doesn't assume any responsibility and accountability, they will not be able to change their life, even if it's a in a good way. They can change it for bad. It's still their responsibility, but most of the people who don't assume any kind of responsibility or accountability will not be able to change their life. It's very, very difficult because let's say you live in a neighborhood which there are lots of crimes and you don't even feel like your health and your life is safe. And if you don't change your behavior and assume responsibility for your actions, you will never leave that neighborhood. And if you die because the neighborhood was too toxic for you, it's your own fault because you've done nothing to change it. Like, think about this. There might be a World War III in the future. I hope not, but that's some option the world do have. They can wage war to each other, they can wage war to other countries, and they can assume a global war, a World War III. But this will be the choice of the countries which decided to fight because of some selfish reasons. The blame will be on them. The blame will be on people and countries who took action on that direction. So let's say a person is living in a very, very difficult country, and there is a serious possibility this country will be involved in World War III. So is it really that person's responsibility because they chose to stay in that country? They could go somewhere else. They could go, let's say, to New Zealand. I think it will be a very safe country in the World War III. But is this really their fault? They didn't leave that country. Let's say they died, there's a war, and they did suspect that. They suspect their countries would get involved and they might die as a result, and they did die. Who will be responsible really? The people who took action to wage war and lead the world into a war, or the people who chose to stay and which led to their death? I think they both are responsible. Yes, this could sound like ridiculous, but I don't think it's ridiculous because they made a choice. They made a choice to wage the war, which will lead people to die, and that is a responsible government. And the people who are ruled by the government chose to stay, perhaps chose to stay while there were many bad decisions, many bad decisions in their country. They chose to stay. So it's also their responsibility if they're dead or if they're injured. So just think about this. It can be very hard for a person to accept these thoughts because we don't wish to assume any responsibility on our life, but this actually gets us to be victims because we are ruling our lives in some ways. When do we give the power to the other people to rule over our lives? Then we give them the power to make us victims. I hope it's not too hard to understand, but I think if you did see the world this way, you wouldn't be in a bad position. You would definitely be in a better position because you would have a choice in your life and you would stop blaming external factors. I don't say they don't matter at all, but I just say you are responsible because you made them powerful enough to victimize you. You are the architect of your own misery in that point, unfortunately. But it's not too late for anything. It's not too late. It's not too late. You don't have to lose any kind of hope. But if you take responsibility in your actions, you can change your fate. You can change your so-called fate because people will assume roles to each other, and some of them will not be nice. And if you are careless enough, you will let them to push you into this kind of role, and you will keep playing them because you don't assume any kind of responsibility. You are giving them the power to victimize you, and it can destroy you, it can execute your soul. And think about this. If you take your power away, if you take your power back from that people and walk away from some of them, by making choices, you can change your life. You can have a beautiful wife, you can have beautiful children, you can have wealth in your life, you can have fitness in your life, you can have freedom in your life, you can have good friends in your life. It's all a matter of making choices, and it's all a matter of taking action, based on that choices. So it's very important to choose and act on their choices because this is the only way that you can change your life. And I do believe in the free will more than I believe in predetermination. I believe we have free will, and I believe we do make our own fate. So I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourself and goodbye.